I've got Vicky, Radke and Tanja Ganga here, who are hedgerow goddesses, totally expert in the art of foraging. You were just about to tell me, Vicky, about your experience of talking to plants.
Plants have different personalities, you know. I mean, I'll go out if I need some rosemary. I don't just go and snap off some rosemary, have a little word and say, please can I have some?
Yeah.
and
thank
you.
Yeah.
And it'll come away really easily, you know. You know, when we're out foraging together, for example. Oh my God, I love that. I love the beardy lichens and the sloes, you know, and I love the beginning of April when the blackthorn blossom comes on before even the leaves come, and then you know that there's going to be a good crop of sloes for all the things we like.
Yes.
And then we've got 2 oaks down there. It's only a little area, but they're called the magnificent oaks, and they are my cathedral. So I go down there sometimes if I need to, and you know, and I give them a good hug. And the thing is that they trees all have different temperatures as well. So some of them are almost the same temperature as us, and some of them, hornbeam, for example, is a bit cooler. Oak is very similar. This tree I also make wine from. And sometimes it has a really good crop of acorns and sometimes it doesn't. Its bark is really lovely and warm to the touch. It feels the same temperature. If you feel it, Tan, it's just lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, see, this is it. So you're talking about it being so human. There is something that there's a warmth to an oak tree that feels like skin. Since I learnt to give Reiki, or the whatever you want to call it, I was going to say the art of Reiki, but it's not an art. It's a way of transmitting energy through me to kind of unblock or to connect with other energies. And ever since I've kind of connected with my Reiki within me and through me, my relationship with trees have been very different. And oaks in particular are really, you can really channel or feel the energy from quite far away.
Yeah.
I mean, they, like you say, the mycelium, they're undercurrents. I mean, they're sentient beings, trees.
Yeah.
And you can, but oaks in particular have a language. And I'm really aware when I'm in the presence of an oak, even if I can't see it.
Absolutely.
I remember when you gave me Reiki, Tanja, you put your hands just above my stomach and I felt this light, this warmth radiating from you, and it was so totally relaxing. But the best time was when you gave Reiki to my dog.
Oh yes,
she just wouldn't get off your lap.
And the thing about animals and plants are that it's not about they don't know what you're doing, so they can't block you with their cynicism. They're just accepting this energy, which I think to them is probably much more familiar than it is to us, because we're too busy blocking everything.
And maybe this whole new craze of foraging and hedgerow medicine is about us unblocking our relationship to nature.
Absolutely, I think that's really poignant actually, because when you were talking about how when we go foraging together, and we do the classic kind of female thing of yakking all the way through, you know, all along while we're doing it. There's a lot of conversation, but it is really interesting. The conversation we have is very, very different to what we have over a cup of tea.
Absolutely,
It's so much more freer. It's almost like we're sort of grounding our roots as well, or we're sort of interlinking with the flow of nature. Being outside and being in nature and gathering the resources of those resources has a definite effect. And I can feel my Reiki just working as I'm picking, so I don't have to actually be actively doing it.
Fantastic. Well, let's go outside and see if there's any stories or Reiki energy happening. Gosh, we do sound like 3 mad women.
We are, and we don't care.
Completely.
Bonkers.
I've adapted this story from the Oscar Wilde, and I just want your input, because it's quite a green story. Even though the images are very old, my telling is very green, very new. I need a red rose, said a student. And she was lying in a tiny room with 4 walls that seemed to be closing her in, and she was terribly anxious about ice caps melting and sea levels rising. I need a red rose, and if I had a red rose, I would throw it into the waters so that my love would ripple out through the waves into nature, and then I will die. The nightingale was resting on one white rose outside her window, and he took every word she said completely literally, and he panicked.
He said, which translates as...
The student, the young girl at the beginning of her life, is going to die. I need to do something about it. And so he flew to the madder plant.
He said...
Listen, there's only a white rose in the garden, and there's a student, and she's so anxious she's going to die unless she gets a red rose. Could I have some of your root? And then I could dye the white rose red, because, of course, the madderflower root dyes red. And the madderflower said, I don't think so. If you dig me up by my root, I'll die. Why don't you go and ask the oak tree, who's got roots to spare? So the nightingale went and asked the oak tree. And the oak tree said, well, I'm all green and brown, actually, and there's nothing I can do, but why don't you go and ask the robin? The robin knows all about sacrifices. Sacrifices, thought the nightingale. And he went to ask the robin, and the robin said...
In robin speak, that's...
Well, yes, I do know, as the oak said, about sacrifices, because when the Christ child had just been born and was dying of cold because the fire had gone out, I began to flap my wings, and then I had a brown chest, but as I flapped my wings, I gave my power to the fire, and it burnt my chest red, and it's been red ever since that time. And what you need to do, Nightingale, is give your heart's blood to the white rose. Go and sing, impale yourself on a thorn, and then you'll have a red rose. And the nightingale said, yes, I'll do it for her. So he flew, pierced his chest, and sang. And in her deep depression, the student heard the song, and in the morning the nightingale had left the white rose, now red, dyed by his heart's blood, on her desk. She says, incredible. A red rose, but far from feeling like giving it up and dying, she decided that she would go and be a climate activist, if you like. So I don't know, what kind of things do you think she did as a climate activist?
She'd want green. She'd want everything to be green again and happy, and she'd campaign for more green life.
Exactly.
Getting groups together. Yeah, just sort of spreading the word and beginning to do... Well, take action, I suppose. Yeah.
Exactly it. She changed her anxiety into action.
Yeah.
I'm just quite pleased with herself, forgotten all about her depression. And as she was walking home, she thought, it's dark and I can't hear that nightingale that sings at my window. And how come I had a red rose when there was only one white rose in my garden? And being female and being a student, she wasn't stupid, so she went to the white rose and she found the dead body of the nightingale. She picked it up, walked out of the city, and she came somewhere like here, maybe the White Cliffs. And she put the nightingale down, and she spread out its tiny little wings, and she started to gather herbs, healing herbs for the nightingale's body. So maybe, I don't know, foxglove for the heart, I'm no expert. What general healing herbs would you use to cover the body of this little dead nightingale?
Well, hawthorn is very good for the heart as well, and of course it's red, which would be very significant. And of course the rosehip as well would be, coming from the rose itself, may have properties.
And things like sage and rosemary, those kind of herbs that would be
very aromatic and enlivening, those ones are. So especially
And
rose
lavender.
and lavender. Lavender being calming, so that would be good as well.
And perhaps dandelion.
Well, that's cleansing, you see, that takes the toxins out, as does, for example, milk thistle or chicory, all of those ones, even nettle, Nettle the Romans used to use to invigorate themselves, didn't they?
Well, she took all those herbs, and there were so many of them, and she felt such love for the nightingale, and this sensory act of gathering the herbs made her cry a little bit as well, so she just spent as long as she could. And by the time she'd finished following the outline of the nightingale's body, it was an enormous bird made out of herbs. And then to send it on its way to maybe the other world, the healing world, she set fire to the herbs, walked away. She still had that red rose with her. And remembering what she'd said, she threw the red rose into the water and asked it to carry her love into nature in general. And then she slept. And when she slept, she dreamed that as she'd walked away, all those herbs had made a spiralling of incense. And even in her dream, she could smell all the scents of those herbs burning. And spiralling with the incense was the nightingale's song. And then she had that rare moment when what you're dreaming inside is reflected outside. She woke up and the nightingale was singing at her window.
Yes, amazing. I love that idea as well of the vortex of the spiralling smoke of the sort of incense of the herbs. That's something that is very much part of everything, the sort of cosmos, you know.
The universe.
The universe, yeah. Literally
The
everything that we
connection with
do, the way we stir things, the way, you know, sort of that type of thing, the way the wind creates vortexes. I love that.
The other thing I was thinking, which is really your area, I know you quite like making wine, Hedgerow wine, and there is a healing world which is out of this world, isn't it?
Yes.
It's kind of like an intoxicant world, and you can get there through conventional intoxicants like wine, or you can get there through images and storytelling. And I know that the old healers used to try and trigger the autosuggestive response of the patient by taking them to another world, maybe shamanic drumming, or maybe with storytelling, and this idea that there's an Avalon out there, a garden of the Hesperides, or an Eden, where you can make some kind of magical transformation of an illness into health.
Yes, and also the fact that, especially over lockdown, everybody has realised that getting outside is good for you. It's not just good for you, it's miraculously good for you.
Yeah, I have heard of a great remedy. It's your left leg and your right leg.
Absolutely.
Single red rose left. So tell us what you're about to do here, Vicky.
Well, I'm just about to bottle some Hunter's Moon wine.
Every moon has a name.
That I actually started making back in the early autumn, and I use nothing in the wine other than a little bit of sugar to feed the yeast, but no other chemicals at all.
The Hunter's Moon could also be called the Harvest Moon, a really abundant time where you're picking your fruit and your vegetables.
This one is made of an oversized courgette, and we call that romping zucchini because it goes so fast. It's such a brilliant fruit to make into wine, actually. Apples from our little orchard, and also haw-berries, the lovely red haw-berries, which is so good for your heart.
We try and make our wines around each moon. So the Hunter's Moon will be drunk, hopefully, by the next full moon.
Oh, there's a challenge.
I know.
You can make wine out of absolutely anything. I mean, we have tried one or two things that perhaps weren't the best in the world. Onion wine, cauliflower wine. And it's an alchemy and a magic that turns the leaves from smelling of the oak leaves in the spring to this. Well, you explained it once, like a Chardonnay.
It's like a Chardonnay.
Yes. We don't know what this is going to taste like, so we're all going to have a little taste of it.
It's about the engagement with yourself, the atmosphere.
It's the magic, isn't it? It's the magic of the ferment. Basically sort of chuck everything in, don't you, to the fermenting vessel. And it's a sort of calm process of nothingness. And then within a couple of days, the whole reaction starts, doesn't it?
It starts to bubble.
And you can hear it fizzing away. And then, you know, it is like a cauldron, isn't it? And you stir and you stir and you stir. And there's a sort of vigour being whipped into it.
So you're just siphoning it now?
Just siphoning it off now. So, would you like me to pour you a little glass? Just try a little bit in pieces. Okay.
This is the fun
the best bit.
It is the nice bit, and it's so lovely just to watch it going from demijohn to bottle to glass.
It's a completely different drink to other, you know, stuff you buy in the shop. And it's the same thing goes with all the other sort of foodstuffs that you make from the land that you set foot on.
Witchy.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers. That is so good.
And
It's got a slight bubbliness.
You never know what you're going to get, ever. Even if you follow the same recipe, it's like it has a life of its own.
But it tastes of wine, doesn't it? It doesn't taste of courgette.
Definitely tastes of wine.
It does taste of wine. Cheers. Cheers.